Cody, welcome to the show, man. How you doing, brother?
Thanks for having me. Good. How you doing, Nick?
I'm doing good, man. How are you, brother?
Not too bad. Staying busy. It's starting to get a little chilly out here in Wisconsin, so trying to bundle up a little bit.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about you, man. Where you at? Where you from? What do you do? Let's go.
Sure. So initially grew up in small town Minnesota. Moved to Wisconsin after the fact. I joined the military, infantryman in the Army for a little bit. Uh, After that, I got into law enforcement. I had a family member who was on the federal side of things, and she kind of steered me this way, and so I ended up going through the police academy and stuff. I work for a large agency in Wisconsin. I'm a canine handler. I've been with our department about 10 years now, and I'm in the western side of Wisconsin. So,
Okay. So you're sitting in between Chicago, Minneapolis. You work a lot of I-90, I-94. What kind of traffic and what kind of cases are you seeing in your area?
yeah, where I'm at is kind of the middle point between the two. So, big thing we're seeing on this side of the state is a lot of methamphetamine, obviously, and fentanyl too. We're starting to see a big uptick in fentanyl ever since COVID hit. We're seeing cocaine kind of make a comeback, I guess you could say, in recent times too, which is kind of unique for us. But main thing we're seeing is a lot of methamphetamine over here.
Okay. And when people hear Wisconsin, is it Wisconsin or Wisconsin? Because I hear both.
Wisconsin. It's probably my
Wisconsin.
Minnesota accent coming out when I say that too. But
All right, man. So when people think of Wisconsin, they don't think interdiction hotspot. So what's the reality out there? Tell us what's going on in Wisconsin.
sure. So frankly, when I started 10 years ago, I didn't think I even knew what the word interdiction meant. I had some really good field trainers. Weren't really drug guys. Got an OWI here and there, but kind of just learned as I went. Trial by fire, and it's just come to the point now where we've really taken off with interdiction. We do an interdiction course for all of our new officers that come out to the road, and we've really tried to make the initiative that it's huge. And it's not just drugs, guns, and money. It's human trafficking. It's these card scammers we're starting to see. It's the felony lane gang, all this sorts of stuff we're seeing up here. So there's all sorts of things going on. And the crazy thing I've noticed is if you have maybe a human trafficker, you're going to see the same signs as a gun or drug trafficker. So it all very closely relates to each other, I think.
Yeah, man. So you're in a unique spot. You have the Canadian border, and I'm on the
Yeah.
Southwest border. Are you seeing drugs coming south? Or are you seeing, drugs going north or a little bit of both? What are you seeing in that regard?
I would say it's more often than not we're seeing our big stuff going westbound. Chicago, coming out of Chicago, is a big hub for us. I will say I've seen an uptick in drugs going southbound. Recently, earlier this year, had a decent fentanyl stop that was headed towards Chicago, which I don't know if that's maybe coming out of the Canadian area, but um, that was a unique one for me. But yeah, it's more often than not we're seeing it heading westbound.
Okay. So, you work in a really complicated like area, I would say, kind of like I do, but like on the Southwest border, we see drugs going north, but we also see, contraband coming south, guns, currency and things of that nature. With you working a bit of both interstate, interdiction and inner city interdiction, how do you think those two worlds meet in your particular area of operation?
I think it's safe to say the biggest commonality you're going to see is your reactions. You're going to see reactions no matter where you're working. I've had the opportunity to work, intercity and interstate interdiction for about 6, 7 years now. And the one thing that you can't change is the reactions and debunking a story too. They have to go from point A to point B, and frankly, that's when they're most vulnerable is when crimes in transit. So if you're able to figure out more or less the deceptive behavior, as you say, setting that baseline for them and seeing what's normal and what's not normal and picking out that abnormality is a big piece for us here.
Yeah, so you hit on a couple different things, and you talked about what's normal and what's not normal. In your area, are you seeing culture differences in your particular area, like as far as like criminality, as far as different types of culture backgrounds fitting to particular types of criminal activity?
You know, we're seeing a little bit of everything. It's safe to say that your most unsuspecting people are going to be involved in crime, and That's one thing you have to learn early on is to throw any stereotypes out the window, because that's not going to get you anywhere but trouble. And so if you're out, going to go out there and keep an open mind and just watch what's going on around you. Here with, the changing of the seasons, one thing I really have tried to take initiative with is on those crappy weather days, just go out there and watch people, watch drivers drive by and reactions. And that's going to more or less set that baseline. 98% of people drive by will maybe just look at you, give you a little wave, but all of a sudden the sky drives by and it looks like you saw a ghost, or, any other reaction. And that should stick out to you. Set that as, your precedence of what's abnormal. And same with vehicles too. You're going to get your, I guess you could say, little beat up cars that are going to be running, low level dope, sometimes mid to high level here and there, but they want to blend in, and you say that everywhere in your training. And that's one thing that really is stuck with me is throw any stereotypes out the window, because that's not going to get you anywhere.
No, no, and 100%, it is not going to get you anywhere, man. And I see this a lot. A lot of things that we try to focus on down here in the Southwest, is not necessarily where the vehicle's from or the vehicle's per se condition, but yeah, when you do focus on vehicles that are kind of like run down type of style, you're gonna come across more low level types of criminality versus more of your mid size, your higher end types of vehicles. Yeah, that's when you're gonna start coming across your more mid level and high level criminal activity, and that's one of the big things that we see down here on the Southwest is we focus on everything, and a lot of the stuff that we see is even in general into the types of vehicles that we see. It's local, so we're seeing small local cities, border cities traveling a short distance or even longer distances north. So looking for typicals, like looking for rental cars and things like that. We're not going to typically, have much luck, or you might get lucky here and there. But if you're focus on is rental cars, like, yeah, you're kind of shorting yourself out. So in your area, do you guys, how much do you guys rely on, intel based, stops versus what you guys actually see day to day going out doing kind of like cold stops?
Yeah, I think it comes down to kind of what our focus is for the day. If we're going to go do some intercity interdiction, it's going to be more or less intel based or knowledge based of where you're working, who you're looking for, kind of your problem areas. Hotels are a big thing for us. A lot of the locals like to use hotels as problem areas. They're places to deal drugs, and even our human trafficking is going to be big in our hotels locally for us too. Um, if we're going to go out on the interstate and do some interstate interdiction, we're going to be more focused on cold stops, watching reactions, little less intel based, I guess you could say. But I like to watch, westbound coming out of Chicago or anything. But I like to change it up and maybe go through a little slump and change it up and just try different options and locations. But yeah, it all really depends what we're working on. We've got a really good group of local people we work with that like to get after it too. And obviously they're going to be the experts with knowing their problem areas and their people too. So networking has been a big thing for me over the last 7 years with interdiction. Talk with your local guys, talk with your other agencies around the surrounding states as well. Maybe they're starting to see trends or see things moving and they'll reach out as well. One thing that I've really taken the initiative with is going to training, and I think Gary said that the other day too, is he's dumped a ton of personal money into training, and it's only going to make you better. Not every course you go to, you're going to take away and be like that was the best thing in the world. Granted, I've been to some, but it's good to take bits and pieces here and there and put it together into your toolbox. And not only are you taking away stuff that can help you, but you're meeting people from all over the country. I mean, I know you and I ran into each other down in Dallas, and I've got to, run into some really good people and just sit there and, pick their brain and just learn. And that's the only way you're going to progress, is because you're not going to be the expert. And you're not going to know it all.
Yeah, man. So you hit on hotel motel. So you hit a lot of good points. So hotel motels, for a lot of newer individual officers that are trying to get into the interdiction game, what are some pro tips? Because I don't work as many hotels and motels as I probably like to. I'm kind of spread thin, across working primarily 5 states down here in the Southwest border. What are some good pro tips you could give some new officers that are trying to get into like some hotel motels? Because like you and I, yes, we work highway, but we don't only work highway. What are some things that you can guide some newer folks that are trying to get into the hotel motel game?
One thing I've picked up on is so our hotels in our area have banned locals from staying at them because the locals are coming in and more or less causing the problems. So have good working relationships with your hotel staff. You know, if they're having problems or seeing people come in, they'll reach out to you too. So that's part of networking with your local hotel staff. But two, watch your vehicle selection. Watch just watching cars. Where's your traffic? You know, foot traffic coming in and out of. I don't have the opportunity to work any plainclothes ops, so I don't know if people would go in and out. You know, Nick Bonney is very good with the consensual contacts, but when it comes to you know, out in a squad car watching surveillance, you know, seeing what cars are coming and going, you know, people maybe are be surveilling the area. Maybe they've got a decoy car watching or eyes out watching um, where they're coming from. I can tell you we don't really have any old school motels, you know, the walk in right off the road. We've got a couple, I guess, but more or less you got to walk in through the lobby and into the room. So that makes it a little tougher to see where your foot traffic is coming, what room and stuff. But yeah, see if there's cars that stick out, you know, out of state plates. Maybe they could be there for an event, this or that. But yeah, watching just people coming in and out of there consistently, you know, leaving frequently. Maybe they're going to pick up or drop off too. So that's one thing I've taken away from it is those are a hot spot for us. We've got a truck stop in the area too, and I've really tried to work on making that more of a priority. And I can't say I've had much success yet, but that's a big one for us too, is truck stops with human trafficking. I know every once in a while we'll get a call that there's a suspicious truck and something weird's going on, but yeah, that's one thing that I've tried to focus on is more truck stops as well in rest areas.
Yeah, man. It sounds like you guys have a lot of human trafficking style types of cases. I mean, what are some good, human trafficking cases you've had over the years? Some closed cases.
Yeah, I guess in recent times with our locals, there's a couple that have hit the news recently with people being human trafficked. I can recall back roughly 5 years ago, I had to stop Alabama plated car. Decent reaction when they passed me. They hugged up to a semi right in front of them, pretty tight. Kind of trying to blend into the semi. Made contact. The driver and passenger were from Alabama, and there was 5 young juveniles in the back seat. Driver initially said there was family members. They were heading from Iowa, going up to a family function in Michigan. I actually had called for a canine at the time. This is prior to me having a dog, just because I saw a lot of the indicators that something was going on. And then furthering that interview with these individuals, it got to the point and using some LPR tools. The vehicle was actually westbound in Texas the day prior. Should have never been in Texas based on his initial story. And one thing led to another. The gentleman then admitted he actually drove down to Albuquerque, picked up these 5 kids from a motel, and was taking them up to a farm in Michigan for labor trafficking. So we were able to kind of work through that, but that would have never happened without communication and a good roadside interview. Honestly, I would have never caught that. So, but yeah, like I said, it's a lot of the same indicators you're seeing with your drug runners or your gun runners came out of that stop as well, and that was a big one that opened my eyes. And being in Wisconsin, I'm like, I'm not going to see a human smuggling thing. There's no way. I'm too far away, and for that to happen was kind of wild. So that was really opened my eyes and kept me when I go up to a stop now. I have to keep an open mind because you don't know what you're going to see.
Yeah, man. So you said something that is very important that I try to tell a lot of officers every time, man. Is like you have a jurisdictional area or boundary in where you work, and what you find can be more engaged to as far as. Let me repeat that. Actually, I'm gonna break that up. So you said a couple of different good. This is where I was saying, like, when you mess up,
No, that's all
just
right.
start over. It's easy to cut it
Sure.
out.
Right.
So you said a couple good things, and one of the good things that you said is something that you find in your area that's jurisdictional base or regional base. So what I mean by that is you don't commonly come in contact with human trafficking, but it does exist in your area, right?
Yeah.
Most officers working law enforcement in Wisconsin wouldn't, probably wake up and be like, I'm going to go out and find me a human trafficking case today. That's something more common, as far as frequency, anyways, as far as us work at the Southwest border. But it just goes to show you that no matter where you are in the country, you can encounter human trafficking anywhere in this country. And it's good that you were probably looking for drugs to some degree. You call for a drug dog. The drug dog, whether it alerted or didn't, it didn't really matter. What mattered is you furthered your investigation and you continued to interview after I'm assuming you didn't find any drugs, and you were able to narrow it down to, okay, these individual kids were being human trafficking from the New Mexico area, my area, up to your area. So I think that's where I always try to tell officers is, just because I work the Southwest border, and just because, yes, I find human trafficking, gun smuggling, bulk cash money smuggling, drug smuggling on a regular basis, you can't compare what I find compared to what you find, because you have to look at your jurisdictional boundaries and where you are in relation to one of the two borders, depending on the type of crime, right? Drugs, guns, money, they're typically going to have some sort of border nexus, especially when you talk about in bulk, quantity being smuggled. I'm not talking one or two guns or, $10,000 cash. I'm talking like bulk, right? There's typically going to be some sort of border nexus somewhere along the food chain. And in between that, you have all these smaller cities, these smaller states that just are passed through, and officers out there need to understand that you could encounter this, and you should be educated for this. So you talked about education, and it's going out and spending your own money on your education, and guys like myself, Gary, Kenny, and all these dudes across the country and girls across the country that are like well known within the interdiction community, we have gone out and we have spent thousands of dollars in ourselves, because agencies that we work with or have worked with in the past haven't invested in us. We're investing in ourselves because this is what we really want to do in our career, right? And you have like the individuals that are like want to be DRE experts. They may not always have to invest a lot of money into these DRE trainings, but I can promise you this, whether it's the training or the gear or the equipment or whatever, they're still investing some sort of money into, like a lot of these smaller departments, because that's what they want to do. And that's what people need to understand. Like, if you really want to do it and you work for a department that won't, put you in a position to do it, sometimes you just got to go out there and do it yourself. And a lot of training, a lot of officers forget this too. Like, you pay for it out of pocket, it's work related, you can write it off. It's a tax expense. You're not gonna like get a whole crazy write off, but it is writable, where you can write it off. So a lot of officers need to understand that.
Yeah, no, and you bring up some big points there. Is the interdiction world kind of took off from me. I mean, we all started on midnights. I got my OWIs, you'd run into some drugs here and there. And I can recall a stop my partner and I had years ago that kind of set it off. We ran into a pound of meth, and for us, that's a decent amount over here, is a pound. And it just kind of like blew up from there, like that itch to want to go out and learn a little more and get the next one. And so that was kind of around COVID time, and nobody was going to training. That was tough times for everybody. And so being able to find those online courses or pay out of pocket and to go to stuff. And one thing that stuck out to me early on in my training that I went to was there was a couple district attorneys going to these and some supervisors. And I think that's huge, because people behind the scenes don't really know what we're doing out there, especially sometimes your supervisors. I know there's agencies that the supervisors are administrative only, and so they don't know what's going on the road. All they do is read your report. Sounds good. Let's submit it, and we're good. And so if your supervisors and prosecutors can go out there and see really what's going on, I think that opens their eyes, and only makes not only that working relationship better, but makes them a better supervisor too. They'll ask, why are you doing this, or why are you doing things that way? And maybe it's them just not knowing. They don't know what's going on. And so that's one thing I guess I recommend. Training shouldn't be just for your road personnel. And so I can tell you, I have a very good supervisor that will break down reports and ask questions. And it's not him being nosy or trying to hem you up. It's him always wanting to learn. And he's really good with that. So kudos to him. I will say that. But yeah, and two, we don't have that close border nexus, but I can tell you that every once in a while we'll see things come through. And like that, for instance, that was a big one for us. Kind of opened our eyes. And there was another good point you brought up there too, with seeing how you guys with the border nexus are hitting these big stuff left and right. And you get your new guys that come out and they're like, oh, I want to do interdiction. And, they stop some cars for a couple months and maybe they get a little bit of weed or this or that. And then they're like, screw it, I'm not hitting the big stuff. And they get frustrated. And it's like, well, okay, you got to remember that, we're in an area that it is tougher. But you know what? It's still there. Crime is in transit 24/7. And so being able to work with these guys and keep them motivated and keep finding stuff with them and work with them, I think that was a big thing for us too. And we do a pretty good job with our newer guys. We put them all through some basic highway criminal interdiction course, but it kind of just sets that baseline for them and kind of gets that itch built in them. And then just keep working with them and building them up a little bit, I think, is a big thing for us too. So finding people that want to do it can be tough here and there. I mean, you can't expect every road officer to go out there and want to do interdiction, and that's fine. You need your road cops, you want your speed guys and your crash guys, and they're good resources for us too. I mean, I can tell you I work with some motor carrier enforcement guys that are solid dudes. They don't want to run into drugs or this or that, but the knowledge they have that will benefit me with trying to do car haulers or box trucks or CMVs is endless, and I reach out to them all the time. So some really good points you brought up there for sure.
Yeah, man. That is one of the things that I see in a lot of new officers, and I always try to relate that back to myself. And one of the big things I had, and I talk about when I go to classes or I talk to individuals, just in public setting, I tell them all the time, look, I went to a lot of these schools, in my initial early career interdiction, and I would get this training, 2 day, 3 day training, and I leave and I was freaking pumped. And I get out there and I work it days, weeks, months, and I'm coming up with, user amounts, user amounts and user amounts. And I'm just like, this is just low hanging fruit. Like, this doesn't work. Like, whatever. Like, and these classes that I went to, they would show kilos and kilos. And that's one of the big reasons why I really limit, if any, like how many like loads I show. Like, if anything, I show it at the end for a case study for after you see the full traffic stop, and then the interview, which I hit on major. I then show you like just what I hit, right? Just so people can understand, because that's usually some of the comments that come through is like, well, cool, we saw this. Well, what did you get, right? Guys want to know like, what did you hit before they even see the interview, and that was again one of my big downfalls. I was so caught up on the what they hit, the end results, and I skipped over how they got there, the end result, the process. And that's what I try to tell a lot of officers, like, you have to understand this is a process. You have to follow it. There's no cheat code for it. If you want kilos, that's cool. It's still going to be respective to your demographics, especially on the frequency level. But at the end of the day, you have to get out there and you have to stop people you would not ordinarily stop. You have to interview these people. You have to try to decipher, are they being deceptive? Are you receiving any deception? Are you causing some type of, I hate this word, nervousness, based off your tone, your modality, and things like that. So yeah, we have to get out there and we have to talk to individuals to try to figure that out. And then that kind of rolls back to kind of wrapped into what you ended in, and how I'm going to roll in my next question. You said one of the biggest struggles is finding people who want to do interdiction, and that is major. So, why do you think that is?
It's kind of a twofold question. One, I don't think people want to have to go through all the paperwork and sitting in a courtroom. I think that's one of it. And two, the instant gratification. It's not like you're going to go out there every day and stop a car and hit the mother load. The patience of going out there and doing it and failing. I mean, I can tell you that you go through slumps, and it happens and it's frustrating. But when you get back and you go out there and you hit a good car and you're like, all right, staying persistent, that paid off. So going back to that first point of wanting to stay out of the courtroom, I mean, I think that's a big part of it is people hate, being in court. That's a crappy situation. I get it. I hate going to court too, but go through and articulate really well. I just had a preliminary hearing a week or so ago for almost a pound of fentanyl, and it got to the defense's questions, and he's like, I have no question, and so being able to articulate your stop really well is a big part of it. Report writing is silly and it sucks, but I think that's going to save you more or less. And some of the case laws out there, I think if things would have been articulated a little better in your report, I think case law could be a little different as well. And two, just being persistent. Like you said, people want to see, open the trunk and you see a trunk load of dope or a bunch of guns or money, whatever it may be, and you're not going to hit that all the time. So being able to be persistent on a traffic stop, and people think it's just you stop a car, it's going to fall out, and there it is for you, and it doesn't work that way. Um, Jeremy Ellison just had our trap make course earlier this year in Wisconsin, and to see some traps that he brought up with were phenomenal. And I can tell you, I've probably missed some, as we all have, but that really opened my eyes too with vehicle searching. You see all these deceptive behaviors and nervous behaviors, I guess you could say, on a traffic stop, but you search it and you're like, oh, must have hit him the wrong way, or whatever. Maybe he is just nervous for this or that, and if you can search a car properly, man, I can guarantee I've probably missed it back in my days, but I'm out there and just trying to really search a car well and work through a good interview is a big thing. But yeah, I think it's a culmination of a couple things there as to why people don't want to do it. And I think another thing would be, they get paid the same regardless. And that's a crappy way to think about it. But, my paychecks can be the same if I go out there and make arrests or not, or this and that. And I think it's a bad way to look at it, but, I think that's a possibility as well.
Yeah, man, you said exactly what I was thinking. There are some officers that out there, they're like, why am I going to go out there, do interdiction, put myself at risk, create paperwork, right? Have to
Yeah.
go to court, and my paycheck's the same. And I look at it as, okay, so if that's the case and that's how you feel, why give me so much crap for going out there being proactive and working, right? And this was really hard for me. And I know I know there's a lot of viewers out there that probably are in the same boat as me, or I used to be, working for a department where you're going out there, you have guys and girls that are on the job that have the same mentality. It's like, why are you being proactive? Why are you stopping cars? Why are you creating your paperwork? Even supervisors, why are you creating them paperwork? Because they probably have to review it before the end of the shift or whatever, depending on policy. So it's like they get upset that you're going out there and you're being proactive because you didn't get into this job to be a parking lot princess. You got into this job because you wanted to fight crime and you wanted to win, right? I got into that job for that reason. And then I got into it not understanding that I thought writing tickets was, the way of the job. You go out there and you write tickets, and if you had the most tickets for the day, that was doing proactive law enforcement. And then I quickly realized, luckily for me, 2 to 3 years within my early career, like I had some people that kind of brought me in. I was like, hey, look, you're writing tickets, you're doing great. You're actually making some good felony arrests. You're getting drugs, you're getting a couple ounces, you're getting stuff off the street. But there's a bigger side of law enforcement than just writing tickets. And then I had people to actually guide me, but we had higher command staff that didn't want to guide me. So then I had to do a couple agency hops to get to a kind of where I am today. In my last probably two, maybe even three, two for sure. We're definitely proactive law enforcement, supportive of going out there and being proactive. And I'll even say, even my current agency, man, like we have a lot of people that just want to go out there and I get paid the same. I'm not going to go out and do any work, and that's cool. But what I do respect is if a call comes out, like I will still be the first to, if I'm in a close proximity, to respond, because I'm in an investigative role. I'm not in a patrol role. So if I'm close by and it's an officer in need of assistance, I'm going. Like, there's no question about it. No one has to even ask, like dispatch. They don't even like do like location checks on me throughout the day. Like, but if I'm in the area with that call coming out, if it's a hot call, I'm going, because I'm a K9 and, I still have a K9 mentality. Like, I want to, still do patrol stuff and things like that on top of interdiction. But that's just kind of where I am geared. So, why do you think, some of these young troopers or young patrol officers, why do you think that they're interested in doing the work? Like, what got you into doing the interdiction role?
Yeah. Working midnights, you're out there, and kind of evil hides in darkness was our slogan on midnights. And you go out there and stop cars, and you're hitting OWIs, and I know I had some local guys I worked with, and we were all kind of competing who can get the most OWIs, and that was fun. And well, in that process, you're going to run into some drugs here and there and some guns, and just kind of the itch you built with that was kind of led me into starting to look at, all right, there's more to it. This interdiction thing is kind of cool. Put yourself through some trainings, and then that was what done it. That's what did it for me, was kind of just slowly working into it. I mean, starting off, I didn't have a clue what interdiction was. And my FTOs I had were just good attitude people. They wanted to go out there and work, have a good attitude, but they were looking for drugs, and that's fine. But I think that built a baseline for me, that good positive attitude, and I think you gravitate towards those people that are similar to you, and so being able to have that good mentality and just go out there and work. I mean, we have to do this job for 20, 30 years, and so go out there, enjoy what you do. I mean, if you hate coming to work, go do something else, and that's fine. We can't expect everybody to love it, but I want to go to work, and I look forward to going to work every day. I look forward to, maybe the next stop will be the big one, or maybe the next stop I'll save a kid. I mean, that's the ultimate goal. I think Kansas Highway Patrol had a stop where they, intercepted a kid that was kidnapped, and that's like hitting a grand slam, like a walk-off home run in the World Series. That's it right there. That's why we do it. Maybe you can pull some guns off the street that just, we're going to be using the commission of a crime, or, maybe that fatal dose of dope is going to be delivered. So having the mentality that what you're doing is making an impact on your community, or, returning that kid. I can tell you there was a traffic stop I had early on in my career that things weren't jiving, a young female and an older male, and I didn't really know what was going on. And frankly, I didn't know what to do. And I remember just kicking the car down the road. That feeling in your stomach was just like, man, that sucked. That didn't feel right, And so being able to put into some training and know how to work through that, or questions to ask, and just building that toolbox you have. So that's part of it for me. Some of the, I guess, spreading my knowledge and efforts to the other guys I work with is always having a good attitude. I think is a big part of it. You don't want to be around a guy that shows up to work and is like, I don't know, let's not do anything today. Let's just go sit around. If you're like, hey, let's do it. Let's go work here. Let's try to do this. You work that way, I'll work this way. Try to set stuff up with your younger guys, and then they'll start running into stuff and get that itch too. I can tell you, we do have a good group of younger guys that are hungry, and they're itching to get after things. And so if we can get them to some training and just being consistent with it, I think is a big part of it is consistency. Because, you start hitting some things, then you hit that lull, and then they're like, screw it, I'm just going to go write some tickets today and call it good. And so just being persistent with your guys is a big thing, and having a good attitude. We've got 9 canines in our unit. 7 of them are our narcotic dogs, and 2 are going to be explosive detection. But our narcotic dogs, for us, are kind of unique. We've got guys assigned, TFO positions and other things of that. But, when we go out there, we're always a resource for other officers out on the road. So I think the group of guys I work with are all kind of have that same mentality and good attitude. So that helps as well.
Nice, man. Yeah, that's pretty spot on. So you guys have 9 for your particular agency that kind of just cover the whole wide area.
Correct. Yeah, we have. Yep, we have. I'll start that over. Yeah, so we've got 7 narcotics dogs, kind of spread out, working different shifts and different kind of roles and responsibilities. And then our explosive detection dogs are going to be more kind of less our specialties for big events and stuff like that. But yeah, we get together once a month, do our monthly maintenance training, and always bouncing stuff off of each other. We also teach a course collectively with our new guys on the road, just an introduction to highway criminal interdiction. And so we're always every year trying to update the content in that and get new things as well. But yeah, we've got a good working group of people here.
That's awesome, man. So, you kind of talked about some of the differences, with among the officers, especially the newer officers coming in and stuff like that. Kind of wanted to shift that conversation. So your DAs, the politics that you have to deal with within the game itself, I know we talked about some of the things in your inquiry when you responded. Some of the counties don't like front seat interviews. Why do you think that is? Because obviously case law supports front seat interviews, but obviously a lot of officers and people in general need to understand that we always have the inner politics that we have to deal with. Why do you think in your particular area, front seat interviews are in certain areas aren't kind of welcome?
I think a big part of it's just going to be, it's not the norm. I think a lot of these maybe prosecutors or supervisors are seeing this, and your typical traffic stop, you walk up there, get their information, go back, run it, issue the paperwork, and when these interdiction guys are doing these front seat interviews or passenger side interviews, that's not the norm. And you get stuck in your ways that, okay, these are, the common statutes or common ways things go about things. And so I think that's a big part of it. And we've done a pretty good job just more or less educating through conversation, sit down and talk with them and showing them, hey, I'm not trying to argue with you, but here's case law supporting this. And then part of it went to training. I can tell you that some of our prosecutors went to some good training, and they saw that, wow, these things are working. These things are, they're proactive, and there's case law to support it. So I think it's gone in a direction that it's more welcomed. But I think a big part of it too can be officer safety. You know, there was I think an incident down in maybe New Mexico where a trooper was killed with that. And so I think that kind of deterred a lot of people, and supervisors, looking out for their personnel, and which I get that. I respect that, officer safety is paramount over a load of dope or, whatever it may be. But if you can go about this the right way and, maybe have a backup officer close or whatever it may be, I think it's a very effective tool. And the things you're going to see talking to these individuals at the front seat or out of their more or less their home field, being in their vehicle, if you can get them out of their comfort zone, you're going to see so much more. And I think that's one thing I've really noticed is when you're able to get them out of their comfort zone in their driver's seat, and you're going to pick up on these things. And maybe somebody isn't being deceptive. Maybe you get them out and you do an interview and you're going to see, okay, nothing's really going on here, but then you pull one back and you're talking to them and it's going to kind of stick out like a sore thumb. So, but yeah, a big thing is just, it's not the norm. And that's kind of what stuck out to me through the years with these conversations with supervisors and prosecutors.
You obviously you hit a point that was close to home, and the morning that New Mexico State police officer, his name was Justin Hare, that he was killed. I was actually just coming on duty, and he was killed within 2 or 3 hours of me going 10-8 for the day, or in service for those that are not law enforcement, 10-8 code. Um, that was definitely a hard one, and I never want a Monday night quarterback what happened in that tragic situation. But I will say, yes, he was doing a motor vehicle assist type of a encounter. I'll use that term. Whether or not it is common for someone to come back to your vehicle and talk to you through the passenger window, I'll say from an interdiction standpoint, we typically would go up and talk to them and then welcome them back to our vehicle. I think that was a little bit of a slightly different situation, because there are some people that have reached out to me, because New Mexico is one of the states that I do work in, and I work very closely with New Mexico State Police. Solid agency. They're very squared away, very tough academy, by the way. And I commend them because in their academy, they actually teach passenger side approaches, and they also offer a segment of front seat interview. But primarily, the majority of them do the passenger side approach, where they go up, they contact the individual, and the driver comes back with the patrol officer, highway or state police officer, on the passenger side of the vehicle. The patrol officer will open the door, swivel their computer, and the violator is on the other side of the door, standing by the tire. That is taught at the State Police Academy, and that is very standard to see across the state with state agencies and city agencies. So it's not uncommon to have that type of encounter, and that's one of the things where I think a lot of agencies should get more involved into that type of style of training, because when you bring someone out of an area where they're less likely to have a firearm and you bring them back to, let's just say, your comfort zone, they're typically going to have the firearm within arm's reach, meaning under the seat, center console, wedged in between the driver's seat and the front passenger, center console, whatever. That's typically where they're going to have the firearm. So when you get them out of that comfort zone and you bring them back to your patrol car, it's less likely that you're going to have a use of force type of situation. Now, it's not a coverall, but again, it's less likely. Why? Let's talk about it. When you think about it in grand scheme of things, the typical way of law enforcement is, you make a traffic stop, you go up, you talk to the individual, you get their license, registration, proof of insurance, you walk back to your vehicle, you do whatever you're going to do enforcement wise. And then what do you usually do? You either run it yourself or have dispatch run it, and then boom, that individual has a warrant. They know they have a warrant. Now you have to get out of the vehicle. You're typically walking back up with nothing in your hands. They know you're not just giving them their stuff back, and they know you're getting ready to tell them they have a warrant for their arrest, and you to step out of the vehicle, or you don't even tell them that, and you just have them step out. You want them to step out of the vehicle. Now there's a confrontation, and now typically there's some sort of use of force. So it's 50-50. It's walking up and an officer is involved in a use of force and they're assaulted, or on a second approach. But in a lot of cases, it's the second approach. Hey, I need you to step out of the vehicle. And they're like, well, you don't have my stuff. Well, why? And now you can immediately see that. So if you get them out of the vehicle, now your only, real course of action of typically when they're going to typically try to assault you is on your reapproach. So if you eliminate the reapproach and bring them back, and they haven't yet armed themselves because the gun is in arm's reach or the weapon is in arm's reach and they haven't yet armed themselves, then they're typically going to, again, like I said, try to assault you on the reapproach. Now, again, I'm not discounting that they couldn't attack you on the first approach, but, we try to remove them from that. And then I always tell people, Terry v. Ohio, right? People have a right to not consent to being pat down. But typically when that happens, if they're armed and they have a weapon on them and you ask them if they have any weapons on them, they're going to typically look at it or make some form of gesture, right? Human instinct, again, going back to deception, behavior, it's going to show itself in some shape or form. Even for those that are somewhat trained in it, they're going to make some sort of, reaction to the question. And that should be a spark for the officer to be like, hey, I need you to call for backup or be extremely on guard for sure, to be prepared for what's coming next. So yeah, man, it's definitely dangerous. And like I said, you talk about Officer Hare, New Mexico State Police. That was unfortunately his life was taken, but that situation was slightly different. And I just wanted to make sure officers that weren't fully aware of that. That's not typically how we do traffic stops here in New Mexico. And again, not to Monday Night Quarterback Officer Hare and his actions that tragic day, but it was just, it was a sad day. That's all I can really say.
Yeah, and I agree. And frankly, I didn't know the whole story, but that's just one example that has been brought up that, oh, this is why it's dangerous. And you're gonna pull out the one incident where it looks dangerous, and I get it. And I don't want a Monday morning quarterback him either. But yeah, that's part of it is they'll pull this one incident out, and that's why they're like, well, we don't like doing this because of that. And again, I respect that. But two, I think you bring up a good point there that you're eliminating maybe that firearm in the vehicle. More often than not, they're not going to be driving, cross country with a gun in their waistband. That's uncomfortable. They're going to take it out, put it somewhere. So yeah, if you can get them out right away, I think it's a huge benefit. Absolutely. But no, it's something that we don't teach, our personnel. It's something that I guess more or less you have to test the waters and see where you work and have a good working relationship with your supervisor as well and see. And I think you can still conduct a good roadside interview, going up and talking to them as well. And you're going to still see some deceptive behavior and nervous behavior. I don't like the word nervous, but I think deceptive is a great word because you go up there and you talk to violators all the time and you're going to just build that baseline. There's going to be a little nerves there because they don't want to get a ticket or maybe they don't have a license, but all of a sudden something's really going to stick out to you and their story starts to crumble. And that's one thing that has been really important for me is kind of breaking down a story. Ask your generic questions and all of a sudden you're going to see something that sticks out to you. And that's one thing we really try to instill in our new guys is ask good questions. People are going to think you're being nosy, but you know what? That's okay. I'd rather leave a traffic stop knowing that, okay, I feel comfortable something wasn't going on there, or I didn't miss some criminal activity. And you're going to miss it. You're not going to, bat 1,000, but if you can feel comfortable saying, you know what, I feel comfortable knowing I got enough out of that stop to let him go and I didn't have to extend it or I didn't maybe miss something. And granted, you're going to run into your individuals that are seasoned. They're going to have their stuff hammered down and they're going to be good at it as well. And that's fine. But I try to ask, enough questions to the point of where I'm like, okay, this conversation is awkward. I don't even know what to say anymore. Because I want to make sure I hit all those points with that roadside interview there. So,
yeah. So you had a good question I was actually going to bring up. Do you have a set of questions that you are prepared to ask an individual when you're out on a motor vehicle stop or a passenger contact? Or You talked about hotel motels when you're contacting. Do you have a list of questions that you have to go through that you are geared to ask, or how do you do your contacts?
I kind of like play it on the fly. And, I think that's a good way to go about it, I guess, from my perspective. And I think it's important to hit those bullet points of, destination, travel, who are you with, or not education, employment, things of that nature. I think those are good to knock out right away and to have that baseline because, say you're traveling cross country for a month, but you haven't been employed for a year, you're in this expensive rental car. I think that'll stick out to you too. But I kind of let the contact dictate it a little bit. If they want to go on a tangent about something, maybe I'll build off of that. And I think that's one thing I've had success in is maybe playing kind of naive a little bit and, act like I don't really know what's going on. And they're on this elaborate story and they think, they know what they're doing, but you're just kind of taking mental notes of what's going on here and things you're maybe seeing in the car as well, too. You're seeing, maybe a car with a bunch of trash in it, or you're seeing things that'll stick out. Maybe a panel's loose, stuff of that nature. So, um, that's a big thing for me is I just try to like, play cool, calm, and collective on the contact. And, they're going to want to talk to you a little more when you treat them nice. I mean, at the end of the day, we got to go home and put, our shoes and shirt on the same way as these guys. So we're all human. And I try to treat people as, we're all human. And I've had good success with that. I mean, sometimes backup's not going to be close. And if you can treat people respectfully, it could save a lot. Maybe with a negative contact or, say you do arrest somebody for somebody and you're debriefing them and they're like, hey, I appreciate you. I mean, I've had people after the fact reach out to me and want to be informants and stuff of that just because, you treated them well and they feel comfortable talking to you. So that's one thing I try to do is just be respectful and, you're not going to get very far if you're, demanding and demeaning people. So, but yeah, I kind of let the contact play the course of how things go for the most part.
Yeah, man, and that leads into this right here. The craft, reading people. The report building. The building blocks. You said earlier you didn't always have a K9, and you had to rely on consent. That's old school interdiction, which a lot of officers in this country don't have a K9 accessible. You know, is this something that you were taught? What got you to get consent without when you didn't have a dog? What kind of got you into that realm?
Yeah, so it's kind of off of that last question is being kind of that calm, easygoing person. You're gonna get consent more, but one thing I've learned is you learn more from maybe your failures, or you could say your rejections. You're denied consent. You look back, you're like, man, what could I have done differently? And sometimes people are just gonna say no, and that's how it goes. But how can you go about a contact and get to the point of where this person feels comfortable with you enough to say, yeah, you can search my car, even though I know there's stuff in it and it is what it is. So, um, yeah, for a good majority of my early career, sometimes the canine wasn't accessible, and that's fine. I mean, you can't expect, these canine guys to be out there 24/7. But I think that makes you a better interdiction officer. I mean, if you go out there day one and you just expect a dog to come sniff a car every time, I don't think you're building a craft or a skill by any means. I think if you can work on consent, and even nowadays having a dog, I still use consent. I think that's a big thing for me is being able to ask for consent. And I think a lot of new officers think that's awkward, asking for consent to search maybe your person or your vehicle. That's weird. I get it, but get out of your comfort zone. Build these skills because that's the only way you're going to progress in this world is keep working at it. You just can't go out there and stop a car and hope to, like I said earlier, see something fall out of it. That's not how this game works. I think it's important if you want to go out there and take off maybe mid-level, high level is build these little tools here and there. But yeah, consent is a big one I like to use. Yeah, even now today, if you don't, U.S. First Rodriguez, extending a stop, sometimes you don't have maybe enough to say, I can sniff my dog in this car. Or some areas, think that's even too much extension of a stop is to get out and sniff your own car. So I just try to use consent, or if maybe another local officer's close, they'll try to sniff it. But yeah, I think consent's a great tool. It's tough to debunk in court as well. Yeah, your client said I can search his car; it's right here. You know, but being clear on your verbiage is one thing we really try to instill on our officers as well. You'll ask people, say, hey, can I look in your car, this or that? And I think that gets a little gray, and we're very blunt with it. We say, do you give me consent to search your vehicle? It's kind of straight to the point, and I think that's one thing that we try to do well, is to not get in that gray area.
Yeah, man. You know, you that is very scary for a lot of younger officers, newer officers. And again, I relate this always back to myself. When I first started interdiction, it was so scary to ask those five scary words. Can I search your car? And that was very scary. And for a long time, I was very scared. I would, get up there and I would see here my lay testimony, right? I would have it. I would know what I saw. I would know how it was said and what manner it was said. And based on my training experience, yes, I believed it to be, deceptive. But when someone showed up, I didn't know how to describe it. And yeah, I had these senior canine guys or supervisors get there and be like, "Oh, you don't have enough. Cut it loose." And it's like in my mind, I'm like, I had everything, but I just couldn't explain it. And I tell people all the time, officers, like, just explain it. It's your testimony, it's your experience. No one can take away your training, but more importantly, your experience. And your experience, a lot of officers fail to realize a lot of times too, can be life experiences. Like, it doesn't have to be law enforcement experience, especially when you're a new officer. They don't expect you to have 15 years of experience. So of course they require, or they would like you to have some sort of other experience that you bring to the table, that you mix and compile with your law enforcement experience, and that's okay. So for a lot of younger officers that are out there, I'll be the first to tell you, you are okay with some of your personal experiences, but don't make your whole testimony rely on your personal experiences. Try to relate that back to your law enforcement training, your experience, and further education in regards to law enforcement, because that's where you're going to make your bang for the buck. So with that being said, for younger troopers and patrol officers, because they come to me all the time, how do you deal with it when they say, I want to go out and I want to start interdiction? What do you tell them?
Go out there and stop cars and just talk to people. I think that's a big thing that's going to help you first, is people start off the bat and be too selective, and they're too busy trying to watch the reactions. And I think that's good that you're trying to. Um, but just go out there and stop cars. Stop as trial by fire. Stop as many cars as you can. Get comfortable with talking to people. Build good roadside interviews. You're gonna run into a probable cause search. The odor of marijuana here gets this probable cause, so you're gonna run into those, and so you'll get comfortable with searching cars, and it's kind of just building blocks off of that. One thing that I've kind of done for years is, if I arrest maybe a user, like a low level dealer, I'll just kind of do a debrief after the fact with them. And I don't use it, in court, but it'll be more or less, hey, how much is this going for? That going for? How long have you used whatever it may be? How do you use it? What other ways are there? And so I like to do a good debrief, just because maybe it's me being curious of, maybe the other side of the world, and, the drug world or whatever it may be. And just seeing how things change over time, and people that maybe use illegal substances, is what is their perspective on things as well too, and maybe what's the trend, where is it coming from, and maybe you can get to the point of flipping on somebody as well too. But that's one thing I've tried to do, is just a good debrief and learn kind of the culture, I guess you could say. But yeah, go out there and just stop cars and just get comfortable talking to people. That's going to be your biggest your tool, or maybe the biggest crutch for you, is if you can or cannot talk to people. I mean, you see the officers out there that are so robotic and walk up there, grab the ticket, and they're knife handing people, and you're not going to get anything out of that. Going up there and just belittling people. Good luck getting anything out of that traffic stop. And now, if you want to get them out of the car, they're going to want to fight with you because you're belittling them. So yeah, just learn how to just effectively talk to people. But training, nothing is going to beat good, effective training as well too. Some agencies are really good. They'll put you through whatever training you can if you got staffing. Some agencies, it's going to be tough, and there's going to be good, free training as well. There's the Midwest Counter Drug Training Center, I can say, up here, that does free law enforcement training. I've been to some really good courses through them. Spend a little money. This is your career. This is going to be your trade craft. So if you have to spend a little money and go to some courses too, that's going to be big. I've gone to some of the national interdiction conferences over the years, and realistically, you got to travel and this and that, but financially wise, they're not bad. And frankly, you're getting a week long training seminar over almost anything possible when it regards to interdiction. So those have been big for me too. And then you get to network and meet some amazing people. And frankly, the people I've met in the interdiction world are very open book. You sit down and talk to them, and they're going to help you out. They'll give you your phone number, and if you want to call them, they are going to help you out roadside, wherever it may be. So networking is going to be something I've really tried to, do over the years. I talked to a bunch of the Illinois guys, and they are hammers, and they are always open to answer a phone call as well. So I got to give a shout out to a lot of Illinois troopers, man. They get after it. They do a great job, and they're always good resources as well too. So
Yeah, there's some definitely remarkable states, and Illinois is definitely at the top. One of the
yeah,
top few agencies, man, that like they really get interdiction. And when these dudes and these girls go out there and they hit, man, they hit big, and that's the drive, that's the passion. And I talk about it every day, man. You got to get up and you got to go out and you have to have that motivation. And it's not even, I don't even want to call it motivation. You just have to have that want to do better, to go out there and find something. I wake up every day. I'm gonna save a victim. I'm gonna save a child, and I will be the first to say I've never had a case where I have personally saved a child or a woman or even a male. Males get trafficked just as much as females. It just kind of goes, in my own opinion, just doesn't go. Let me repeat that. Just doesn't go as recognized as many other cases, but males get trafficked just as much as anyone else. And I really think that, man, I just want to get that one of those cases. Like, I look back at my earlier career of all the stops that I did prior to getting into a full-time interdiction team, and all the tickets that I wrote and all the people that I let go with, hey, here's your citation, press hard, 4 copies, here's your court date, 2 weeks out, 30 days out. And I'm just like, man. And now knowing what I know, I'm ashamed to go to class and tell people, or go to conference and tell people, like, yep, I exactly what you got. The example I just showed you guys on the screen. Yeah, I had like 5 cases of those when I was a young officer. And yep, they probably were involved in some sort of criminal activity, but we'll never know because I let them go with a ticket. If I even had access to those videos, I would probably play them just so officers could understand that, like, even what, and I never assume or want to be the greatest or the best, because I know I'm not. But younger officers coming in behind me, or officers that have even been in the game longer than me, that follow me, they're like, oh man, Nick's the GOAT. Like, that's cool. Like, all right, thanks. But at the end of the day, it's like, I'm not the GOAT, because you guys see my successes. I dwell on my failures, and that's what makes me who I am today. And damn, man, like, I really just, I really hate myself for not knowing this. And that kind of led into a lot of what the reason why I wanted to teach. And this is the real reason why I wanted to teach. And this is the first Border to Border series, so I'll put it out there. This is the real reason why Nick Jackson wanted to teach. I wanted to teach because of all of the officers, all of the supervisors in my life, my career in the past, that have, did not motivate me, that denied me from doing proactive policing, that deterred me away from doing proactive policing, that wanted me to go out there and take calls, write tickets, take people to jail for, petty offenses where they could have got a citation and release. All of those type of individuals in my past career. This is why I want to teach proactive policing and going out there and doing the job and doing it the right way, right? Because there's people out there that are victims of crimes, whether it's property crimes, whether it's a victim crime of a violent offense. These are the crimes we need to be out there pursuing. Identity theft, that's a big one. And all this stuff is upping down our roadways. And these are the, same individuals that told me, don't go out and do traffic stops. It's worthless. You're not saving the world doing traffic stops. And I get it. I'm a one-man show, and there's only a handful of us across the country that love being proactive. And there's plenty of parking lot princesses in this job. And that's great. And if you're good at it, keep doing it. No shame at all. But I'm a proactive individual. I want to go out there, and I want to go out there and hunt the criminals in this country. And I think that this is what law enforcement should be. And I'm really happy with the administration that we have right now. And I hope it continues, but it just is what it is, man. Like, this is why I do what I do. This is why I teach. This is why I travel the country teaching, because I want officers to know everything that I miss, because especially the young officers, they have the opportunity to go another, 19, 15, 16, 17 years doing this. I'm only going to be doing this for much longer before I retire. So if I can pass on some knowledge, that's where I feel like if I can help one guy, one girl be successful, I'm good.
Yeah, and you bring up some big points. Is being able to, you get the naysayers, you go out there, you start hitting some loads, and you get some stuff, and then everybody's like, "Oh, where'd you get your intel from?" Or what cold, what whisper stop was that? And it's like, okay, fine. And if you want to play that game, that's fine. And I'm not gonna say anything, but then I like to play devil's advocate. Okay, let's go work the road and let's do this stuff. And they're like, "Oh no, I'm busy doing this or that, or I don't want to go to court or do evidence or this." It's like, okay, and that's fine. You can sit back and say, but yeah, like I said earlier, the individuals that have more or less been role models in the interdiction world are so good at being open books and constantly putting out content. And Kenny and Jeremy and everybody out there is just putting out such great content. And you guys are open books that it helps all of us. It builds that drive. And yeah, seeing the loads is cool, but I like watching more or less what leads up to it, the roadside interview, or maybe the pre-stop indicators as well. And you go through good points with stage one and stage two, and just watching these cars. And that was always tough for me, is maybe seeing that stage one driving behavior, and it just takes time. And that's why this winter is going to be a big thing for me, is just watching driving behavior, watching occupant behavior as they come up for me. I try to really work on those things when I can. If you can't go out there and want to work in the rain, and that's fine, but you can still get better on those days, is watch those cars and stuff like that, or maybe go sit on your hotel, motel, or truck stop, or whatever it may be, and just see what the norm is. So then when you're doing these things and something sticks out to you. So yeah, if you're able to focus on, if you really have a passion for interdiction, I think it's important that day to day you're out there doing these things, because you're never going to be the best one in the world. And that's fine if you can build these and maybe pass your knowledge off to somebody else, or somebody looks up to you and you might not know it. Just work with them constantly. And I think that's a big thing too, is be a good role model. So no, you bring up some good points there.
Yeah, thanks, Cody. I appreciate that, man. And that's one of the things that, my motivation behind doing this border to border series is I want to reach out to officers that are not necessarily, experts, in the field, but, guys and girls that are on the front line. And I want to go state to state, and I want to talk to at least one officer per state. And I want to get, some insight, because what I'm seeing on the Southwest border and what you guys are seeing, in your case, in like the Midwest area, the northern border, it's a lot different, but at the end of the day, our goal is the same. Our goal is simple. It's to go out there, and seek criminal activity. And that's through contacts, behavior, upon seeing our presence and things of that nature. And dude, I really appreciate you coming on the show. You bring a lot of mindset, and you bring the connection and doing the job right. And regardless if you have a dog or a canine or not, you bring good light to it. You don't need it, and it's just one tool to our tool belt, for us being successful, man. So I definitely want to thank you for coming on, and you're definitely the first officer we have come on, man. And dude, I appreciate it, man. And solid point, bringing it in from Wisconsin. I know it's not Wisconsin, but I know I joke about that. But no, man, thank you for coming on, bro. I really do appreciate it, and you bring some good insight to the table. I appreciate you, bro.
Yeah, again, I appreciate all you've done for me and for the community. I know there's a lot of people I work with that look up to you and watch your content. So that's a big thing, is just staying up on it. And if I can bring a resource or a tool to anybody, absolutely reach out. If there's anybody in the Midwest that needs anything, absolutely reach out. And I'm always open to try to help out. I mean, I'm not at the expert level of some of you guys are, but I see a little bit here and there, and I like to just help people. So if there's anybody out there that needs anything from Wisconsin, let me know.
I got you, man. Cody from Wisconsin, bro. Thank you again, brother. Anything you want to leave the viewers with really quick?
No, just appreciate you having me. And, I look forward to this series and whoever's to follow. I think no matter where you're working from, you're going to see some of the same stuff and maybe a little bit stuff too, but it's good to just stay up on it. And so I'm looking forward to see how this series works out. So I appreciate you having me, Nick.
Yeah, thanks, Cody. I appreciate you, brother. Thanks for coming on, bro.
Thank you.